Hey Cider fans, it's Cider Guys here. I'm Justin.
And I'm Mark.
And we're just glad to be back with you. Finally making another video. Been a long time. And that's just, life's got in the way and we've had other priorities that have got in front of us, but we're finally back together. Just want to do a quick video. There's been a few things we've been able to do in the cider world lately. And we just want to give you a little update on that. We've got a cider that we want to review and talk about another cider that we had the opportunity to try out. You might have seen that on our Instagram feed where we got to go to Bull City and try this year's Cardinal Sin, and we just want to talk about that one real quick. But we're going to start today's episode out with talking about the Cider Fest that we've been to lately.
Yep. So I got the opportunity to go to Cider Fest this year up in Asheville. This is the first year that the NC Cider Association was able to take over control of that and run that and put that on. So that was cool. Lots of ciders were there. Got to try a whole lot. Got to try a bunch of meads and just have a good old time. But it was just nice catching up with a bunch of old friends that we hadn't seen in a while. Mm-hmm. Got to sample a bunch of new things the Cider Association taking this over, it's going to be a little bit of work, but I think it's going to, in the long run, it's going to turn out that Cider Fest is going to be better than ever. So
cool.
Yeah, just got to keep supporting them.
Yeah. So what did you think about the venue, being at the ball field?
So yeah, so it was Cider Fest was in the outfield of the Asheville Tourist Baseball Stadium, and that was pretty cool. It was wide open. The crowds were a little lower this year, so the lines were real short, and like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of people, but a venue like that can hold a lot of people, and there's lots of room to grow if they continue having it there.
Yeah.
So.
And I think and we talked about this, I think those lower crowds are just a product of the advertising of it. I think that we were all waiting because, so usually Cider Fest is always put out there in July, like around July the 4th is when they start to advertise and put out the date and everything. And I think we were all waiting for that because we knew that it was going to be a little different this year, but we didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. And when that didn't come out, I think people just assumed that it wasn't going to happen. And then it finally did happen, and I think it, as Mark said, it happened very well. But I think that might have pushed the crowds down. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of factors went into it. We won't get into all
that. Yeah. There's a lot of some politics that went into it that I'm just glad they still have it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that out of all of it, I think that's the take home is we're just glad they still have it. Which is good because I think we need things like that. I think there's a good market for these Cider Fests, and because, I mean, if anybody's ever looking, and there's these beer fests and wine fest, they're all over the place. So it's about time for ciders to get a good stronghold in these bigger cities. And speaking of that, not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, we were able to go to the Charlotte Cider Fest, which is the second annual Charlotte Cider Fest held at Red Clay Cider Works in Charlotte, and that was really good. We had a good time there.
Yeah, the weather was a little damp at the beginning, but it cleared off, and people started showing up, and I got a good crowd there too.
Yeah,
it was smaller than Cider Fest. I mean, given the space and everything, but it was different cider makers too, not just North Carolina, but the Cider Fest invited like North Carolina cider makers, where the Charlotte Cider Fest had North Carolina cider makers and also distributors in the region, so like Blake's and 1911 and people like that. So.
Yeah. And we even had some international ciders there, which was nice. That's a cool thing that the Charlotte Cider Fest offers is a chance to try international ciders. So if you're a cider fan that's tried, North Carolina ciders, or even regional ciders like you're talking about Blake's or something, or even, Austin East ciders out of Texas, that's cool, but it's cool to see some French ciders coming in. That's what we're able to try. So that was kind of cool. That was a cool little treat that we were able to do. And they kept the long line. I would just say they consistently kept a long line for those.
And they had the long line at Cider Fest too. So.
Yeah.
People are interested in that. It's different.
Yeah, it's different. And it is different. I mean, if you've never tried an overseas cider before, it's a different it's a totally different animal. The yeast they use and the apples that they use and just the flavors, it's totally different. But if you get a chance, we highly recommend, trying some of those international ciders. It's definitely worth it. Well, let's get into a couple of the ciders that we've tried lately. So we'll talk first about the Bull City Cider Works Cardinal Sin for this year. Now, if you've listened to any of our videos in the past, you know that we're huge fans of Bull City and especially Cardinal Sin. I've said it before, that was one of the first ciders I ever tried and instantly fell in love with it. So we look forward every year to Cardinal Sin, and now, with Jack and Oak coming out as seasonals and Spruce Springsteen coming out soon, we always look forward to those every year. And we always like to give you our opinion on how they are from year to year. So as of right now, we've started with Cardinal Sin, and it was good. It was definitely different from the years past. I feel like that it tasted more like Off Main and less like the Cardinal Sins of yore, but it was still good. I mean, the cinnamon was still there. It's still definitely worth it to go get. But if you've had the iterations of Cardinal Sins of the past, it's not exactly the same, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just different. Yeah.
And for those that may not have tried it, it's a cinnamon cider.
Yeah. Apple cinnamon, which is, it goes together like.
So this year more apple and less cinnamon.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to put it. But still definitely worth a try. It's just, just different. Yeah. But if you've watched any of our previous episodes, we've talked about like the Spruce Springsteen being a little bit different every year, and there's a lot of things that go into that. That's the one thing about tasting ciders is. Yep. It's going to be different every year. I mean, even like ciders that are the flagships, like Bull City Off Main, they're going to taste different every year because apples are just different every single year. Yep. So, but another one that we've just tried, and actually what we're sipping tonight, is a offering from James Creek. And Mark was able to get this one from Cider Fans, so I'll let him kind of talk about that a little bit talking about James Creek.
So yeah, like I said, I had an opportunity to catch up with a bunch of people that we'd have conversations with in the past that we hadn't seen in a few years, and one of them was the cider makers at James Creek, and they gifted us with this bottle of their Foggy Ridge Orchard's Heirloom Blend. Now this is made with apples from Foggy Ridge Orchard, which is owned by Diane Flint. Those of you in the cider world should know that name. Mm-hmm. But these are all apples that she grows at her orchard, and she planted this orchard like in the late 90s with just cider apples, so no culinary or no dessert apples, but she made this orchard for the sole purpose of cider making,
which in that time was unheard of. I mean, that back in the 90s, if you've seen our little video about the Johnny Appleseed presentation we did a couple years ago, when cider apples got wiped out, nobody planted them back because they weren't worth anything at that point. Yeah. So that's definitely something that's different, especially in the 90s. Mm-hmm. People just weren't doing it. Yep.
So yeah, Diane and Foggy Ridge stopped making cider around I think 2018, and they've been selling their apples to cider makers to make ciders with. So James Creek has their own orchard, but instead of using their own apples, they use Diane Flint Foggy Ridge apples for this cider.
Yeah. Cool. So this one, just to kind of give you a synopsis of what it is. So this was pressed from a field blend of Roxbury Russets, Harrison, Grimes Golden, and other apples. They call it a keeve, which for in layman's terms is the good stuff. Yeah. So that's a term that's used in the champagne and wine world a lot for high qualities. So this keeve is a dry, complex, earthy blend with some light barrel aging. A delightful bouquet of pan-fried apples, grapefruit pith, and damp earth leads to a mouthful of spiced apple, citrus, and a light note of lemongrass. The long, smooth finish pairs well with grilled fish, roast chicken, and mushrooms, or hard-aged cheeses. And this is a residual sugars of 4 grams per liter, and it is a 7.3% ABV, which is actually pretty stout in the for ciders, especially just from around here. So our kind of tasting notes, it's dry, it was bubbly, so it was pelleted, and it was pretty good. I mean, it was a good just rounded cider.
Yeah, slightly tart, good tannic, not too much, not overly dry. Just great flavor of those apples, those cider apples.
Yeah. So, definitely a good sipping cider, I think.
Absolutely.
Something you could appeal to a lot of people with.
Yep.
So, so again, if you ever see this one around or any of the James Creek or Stargazer offerings, check them out. They do a good job. And they're orchards. They're down in the east part of North Carolina. So something that's definitely worth a day trip, you know, especially if you're going to the beach, want somewhere to stop, be a good place to stop and see those guys. Yeah. But a big thanks to them for gifting us this bottle to try out and review for you guys. We appreciate all that they do for the cider world, and they've always been a big fan of ours. Always, you know, every time we see them somewhere, they're always willing to talk, always willing to be hospitable of the cider guys. So we definitely appreciate that, because that's what makes this worth it, is the community around the ciders, and getting back into, you know, making them start to be more mainstream and stuff like that. So we've always said that the cider world is kind of lagged behind the craft beer world by 4 or 5 years. And I think that outside of the C word that happened in 2019 and 2020 and 2021, that kind of put a damper on everything. I really think that ciders fared well in that time. I mean, we really only seen, what, 1 or 2 cideries that were well established in that time kind of, you know, go by the wayside. So, I mean, that says a lot. So I think that the cider is really coming into their own right now. And James Creek is one of those that has some really good offerings. Yep. So, all right. Well, that's about all that we have for this episode. Anything else that we missed or that you want to talk about?
I think that's it for now.
So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us again. Again, we're glad to be back into it. Glad to be back behind the camera, talking to you cider fans, bringing you some news and some cider reviews. So, stay tuned. We'll be doing this more a little as we can. Again, you know, life gets in the way sometimes, but we'll weather that storm. We'll give you some good content. So, but as always, from the cider guys, cheers.